Hello everybody, and welcome to another Game News Roundup, the second one this week. This is being, as always, live streamed on Twitch, twitch.tv/TrunksWD. It is currently November 23rd, Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving here in the United States. I was not planning on doing this morning, and then lots of bigger gaming news about, of course, as always, Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, at least proposed acquisition has come out, and we shall see where things end up and all that stuff, as well as some sales stuff, God of War sales, Pokemon sales, and whatnot. So, let's get into this first bit. PS6 and next-gen Xbox are not expected to come out until fall 2028 at the earliest, which would be 8 years after launch of the PS5 and Series X and S, which came out 2020. Looking at previous generations, from the PS3 to the PS4 and the PS4 to the PS5 was 7 years between. I'm trying to remember between the PS2 and PS3. I'm trying to remember how many years that is, but I don't quite remember. Is that 6 years between them or 7 years? 2000, 2006, 6 years, 6.5 years. And then with Xbox, well, original Xbox was 2001 to 2005 for 360. That's 4 years later. But the Xbox One didn't come out until 2013, so 2005 to 2013, that's actually 8 years. But everything was pointing to this is going to be a longer generation with the PS5 and Series X and S because of the shortages. And it seems like we're still in that cross-generation period, which seems to be lasting a whole lot longer than in previous generations. And with how expensive GPUs and CPUs and everything have gotten lately, and it feels like in order to get a big enough leap in console generations, you're going to need that extra year or two where they won't be releasing a console that's going to be $600 or $700. Everyone remembers that fateful day in, was it 2006? E3 2006, where Sony's like $599, and I'm sure Microsoft was like, party! Because, the 360 was $300 or $400, depending on which version you wanted. Though I guess there was the cheaper PS3 for $500, but either way. You really don't want to release a console at launch more than, I guess at this point, $500? Looking at it. Well, $300 seems to be the more sweet spot in console prices, looking at sales and stuff. But, anyways, this personally is from the Competition and Markets Authority of the UK, where they published Sony's response and Microsoft's response to Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard. So from Microsoft's response itself, it reads, the parties, being Microsoft and Sony, do not dispute that some portion of gamers are likely to reassess their console ownership at the start of a new generation, reads the response from Microsoft. But they also note that this is an event that only occurs approximately every 8 years, 7 or 8 years. Indeed, the next new generation of consoles are not expected to be released before the fall of 2028 at the very earliest. Again, this is for Microsoft themselves. The ongoing global shortage of semiconductors and supply chain disruptions have limited the supply of PS5 and Series X and S consoles. But yeah, Sony, in its own response, said that Microsoft offered to continue to keep PlayStation Call of Duty until 2027, which hints to, like, the end of the current generation, and then 2028, if you see the PS6, Series, whatever the next-gen Xbox is going to be. Who knows at this point? Microsoft has offered to continue making Activision's games available on PlayStation only until 2027. Likewise, in public comments just on October 26, Microsoft said that it plans to offer Call of Duty on PlayStation only as long as that makes sense, a period, until 2027 or some other possibly shorter time that Microsoft unilaterally determines makes sense to Microsoft is badly inadequate. Now, this was in October, and in this month, so after this came out, Microsoft had offered a deal with Sony to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years. Mind you, Microsoft has stated they plan to go the Minecraft route with Call of Duty. I mean, of course, plans could change in the future. When I say the Minecraft route, it's Microsoft bought Mojang and Minecraft, but it's still on PlayStation and Nintendo platforms, and obviously on PC as well. So that's what they're planning with. Say they're doing that with Call of Duty. Maybe we might see Call of Duty on the Nintendo Switch. Not sure how. Maybe through cloud gaming. But anyways, yeah, this main article is about PS5 and next-gen Xbox potentially not coming out until, or likely not coming out until fall 2028. But again, at the earliest, it could be 2029 or 2030. Probably not 2030. I think 2028, that extra year between generations makes more sense. Maybe 2029, get another year. But again, it depends on how console sales and how software sales keep up over the years. Because you get to a point where, after 3 or 4 years, usually sales start to dip. And then they, every year after that, they go down a bit, they go down a bit, and then obviously a new console comes out. And there's that cross-gen period, for usually a year or two at most, but usually like a year between the two. It depends from generation to generation. If you look at PS3, the PS2 still sold like 50 million units after the PS3 had come out, but the PS2 was like $100 at that point, and the PS3 was $500 or $600, and had very slow sales in that first year or two before they started to pick up later on in that generation. More on this whole with Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Sony is claiming Microsoft could increase its prices, of Xbox consoles and games if the deal is approved. So Sony's quote here: in the short term, PlayStation users would no longer have access to Call of Duty, or would be forced to spend £450 on an equivalent Xbox to play this hugely popular game on their less preferred device, according to Sony. In the midterm, a significant number of PlayStation users would likely switch to Xbox or Game Pass. Faced with weaker competition, Microsoft would be able to increase console and game prices for Xbox users, including those that had switched from PlayStation. Increase the price of Game Pass and reduce innovation and quality. This is, again, Sony's quote here. These harms would be amplified by the direct and indirect network effects at play in the industry, allowing Microsoft to further raise prices or reduce quality once its position has become even more entrenched. Now, as I posted in this article, it should definitely be noted that Sony, just within the last few months, increased the price of the PlayStation 5 outside of the U.S. I think the U.S. was the only place they didn't actually raise the price. So yeah, if you wanted a PS5 for the first, year and a half or whatever, it was one price. And then in the last few years, they raised the price of the PlayStation 5. Except in the U.S. It's pretty much everywhere outside the U.S. Oh, and they also, this generation, they were one of the first companies to raise the price of their games from $60 to $70 at the start of the current generation for games on the PS5. While since 2005, games have been $60. So yeah, they basically said they're claiming that Microsoft might raise prices because they'll have weaker competition from Sony. But Sony, being the market leader, has already done these things. I don't know what to add to that one, but that is what Sony's claiming, even though they just did it themselves, especially raising the price of consoles in the last few months. So I don't know. But yeah, and Microsoft and Nintendo have not raised the price of their consoles this holiday, like what Sony did within the last few months. And obviously, it's only a temporary deal, but the Series S is available for $250 for the holidays. And I think some places are even offering better deals, but that's up to retailers and not so much Microsoft. Moving on, more Sony claims. Microsoft wants PlayStation to become like Nintendo. I read that and I was like, what? Wait, what? Not like Nintendo, you mean like the console leader? I mean, technically, I realize it's not about sales of consoles, but the Nintendo Switch is in the next 2 to 3 weeks gonna outsell the PlayStation 4 and become well, actually, and you can say even the Game Boy and become the third best-selling video game platform of all time. But yeah, it is only a couple million away from outselling the PS4. And with the holidays, it's gonna do it rather quickly. But yeah, Sony in its a newly published response to Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard claims that Microsoft's strategy is for PlayStation to become like Nintendo and to no longer be able to compete in the shooter gaming market. Microsoft has previously said Nintendo has been successful despite not having Call of Duty on the Switch. Basically, Microsoft says Nintendo is the leader. They do fine. They sell great despite not having Call of Duty or really any Activision Blizzard game on their platform. And they've said in the past that Sony can do the same, even though they still plan on keeping Call of Duty on PlayStation anyway. But yeah, Sony's quote: Microsoft claims that Nintendo's differentiated model demonstrates that PlayStation doesn't need Call of Duty to compete effectively. But this reveals Microsoft's true strategy. Microsoft wants PlayStation to become like Nintendo, so that it would be a less close and effective competitor to Xbox. Post-transaction, Xbox would become the one-stop shop for all the best-selling shooter franchises on consoles. Call of Duty, Halo, Gears of War, Doom, Overwatch. I guess they also missed the Wolfenstein, but as the decision explains, and it would then be free from serious competitive pressure. Now, Sony has released their own shooter franchises in the past. I just haven't done any of them in a long time. And obviously, there is also Battlefield, but Call of Duty is the biggest shooter franchise. And I know Splatoon is not, like you say, a gory, M-rated, 18-plus shooter, but it is a shooter. And that is a Nintendo game. The franchise is firmly entrenched in gamer psyche. Every installment since Call of Duty was first released back in 2003 has consistently topped the charts. Obviously referring to Call of Duty here. Ignoring these facts, Microsoft would argue that Nintendo has been successful without access to Call of Duty. This misses the point. The decision identifies a wide body of evidence showing that Nintendo offers a differentiated experience to Xbox and PlayStation because it is focused on family-friendly games that are very different from PEGI 18 first-person shooter games like Call of Duty. Although if you look at the first-party lineup, you get a lot of on PlayStation. It's mainly like, you look at God of War, Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, a bunch of others that are basically, you would say, her third-person action platform or action games, action shooters. Some are platformers. But anyways. But yeah, Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer last month stated Microsoft plans with Call of Duty, if the deal is approved, is to treat it the same way as Minecraft, as I said before. So, yeah. We'll see how things go. Sony, it makes sense. They're doing everything they can to get this deal stopped, because it will hurt their bottom line. Even if Call of Duty remains on PlayStation, people might go to Xbox because it's on Game Pass, or they see commercials, or in the future will be, only have the Xbox logo or the Game Pass logo at the end, or there might be some exclusive content, potentially. Like with Sony. Sony does pay Activision right now for exclusive marketing rights, as well as some exclusive content. And Microsoft did that 2 generations ago during the 360 days. Another thing from this report, from their responses, apparently we now potentially know the number of subscribers for Game Pass. 29 million, potentially. This is what Sony claims. Game Pass leads PlayStation significantly. Reads a response from Sony. Microsoft already has a substantial lead in multi-game subscription services. Game Pass has 29 million subscribers to Xbox Game Pass Console and Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and is expected to grow substantially in the future. The multi-game subscription tiers of PlayStation Plus considerably lag, with fewer than redacted, of course it's redacted, the number of subscribers. So apparently PlayStation Plus has less subscribers than Xbox Game Pass, but the biggest difference is Game Pass includes a lot of games, all first-party games, day one, even some third-party games, day one that they come out, while PlayStation Plus does not. But PlayStation Plus is also required for playing games online, so you would think you'd be more than 29 million, but what do I know, right? I'm just, you say, the messenger here. With these responses from Sony and Microsoft. But yeah, that is the main topics. Here's the thing. Sony's response was like 22 pages, and Microsoft's response was like over 100 pages. So that's a lot to go through, and I'm sure there's maybe some bigger things I missed, but I digress. Moving on, this came out not that long ago from Politico, who spoke with three sources with knowledge of the matter, claiming, again, I named this as a rumor, because who knows, we'll see how things go down, that the FTC in the U.S., the Federal Trade Commission, is likely to file an antitrust lawsuit to block Microsoft's proposed $68.7 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard. If the lawsuit goes through, it would be the biggest move by Chair Lina Khan. However, it isn't guaranteed. However, The lawsuit isn't guaranteed, and the 4 commissioners at the FTC have yet to vote out a complaint or meet with lawyers for the companies, according to 2 of the sources, this companies being Microsoft and Activision Blizzard. The sources say FTC staff have reviewed the deal and are skeptical of the company's arguments, again, being from Microsoft and Activision Blizzard. FTC's investigation into the proposed deal remains ongoing. However, much of the research has been completed. This includes depositions of Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella and Activision head Bobby Kotick. Again, this is according to these sources. So treat this with a grain of salt. A grain of salt. Apparently, I can't speak. It's been a long day, okay? And with Thanksgiving be tomorrow, I'm just like, all right. Holiday weekend. If there's still a little bit of work for me to do, it's going to be mainly a relaxing weekend for me, which I definitely need. But anyways, it is possible if the FTC moves ahead with the case, it could be as soon as next month. One of the main concerns from the FTC is if acquiring Activision Blizzard would give Microsoft an unfair advantage in the video game market. As of right now, the Xbox is in 3rd place behind Sony's PlayStation and Nintendo's Switch. So Sony has been the main company against the deal from the start, as we've been going over for most of this. So, they have raised many concerns over it. We'll see. Now, other reports, Richard Hogue, he's a lawyer. In his own response to this report from Politico, he says, I just can't tell. Unlikely. Remember that in general, to get a consent decree level, the FTC is going to prepare a complaint or suit as part of that process. I do think there's a virtual guarantee that the FTC is going to seek concessions, but I've thought that for some time. No need to go to either administrative or federal court if they can get what they want by other means. Consent. Sounds like the FTC might, if this goes through, want some consent from Microsoft that will be like, all right, Call of Duty has to remain on PlayStation for X number of years, or whatever, something like that, or all Activision Blizzard games have to also remain on PlayStation with console parity or something, for, again, X number of years. I doubt they're going to have a concession for, it has to be forever. Usually it'll be number of years, because forever is a little bit too long when it comes to lawyer speak and whatnot. He also added, in fact, they may file the lawsuit just so they can file the consent. Either way, what we can surmise is that they want concessions at minimum, which it sounds like, a lot of other places are as well, looking at the UK CMA. And also, Michael Pachter, well-known video game analyst, US FTC likely to be crushed in court, which is why they won't sue. This gets resolved by Microsoft agreeing to a list of demands to maintain the status quo. And then he expects FTC to drop his objections after Microsoft agrees to some demands and mashing what the lawyers said. Which is probably what I think is where this is going to go. Microsoft will have to make some concessions going forward instead of being like, all right, deal's done. Are you good, Microsoft? Do whatever you want. That they will have to be some things that Microsoft will have to do to make the regulators happy. So, that is it about the FTC. A handful of more things. Sales stuff here. God of War Ragnarök sold 5.1 million units in its first week, setting a first-party PlayStation record. PlayStation tweeted, congratulations to Sony Santa Monica for making God of War Ragnarök the fastest-selling first-party launch game in PlayStation history, again, with 5.1 million units sold in its first week. And, and it is also, unsurprisingly, at that point, would be a franchise record for God of War. So God of War Ragnarök, big launch for PlayStation and Sony. And another big launch, an even bigger launch. It sold pretty much twice as much, potentially a lot more than twice as much. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company have announced Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have sold over 10 million units worldwide in 3 days, including 4.05 million units sold in Japan. That is a lot of games sold. That is a new record for Nintendo. Biggest launch in Nintendo history. Biggest Pokemon launch in history. Potentially the biggest exclusive launch ever. I'm not 100% certain on that, but it's potentially the biggest launch ever for an exclusive game. So this excludes multi-platform games like Call of Duty, which will most surely sell more than 10 million units in its first week. Again, of course, that is on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Well, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is exclusive to just the Switch. So yeah, Nintendo, from its press release, this is the highest number ever for global and domestic sales in the first 3 days after the release of software for all Nintendo game consoles, including Nintendo Switch. In 3 days, it's over 10 million. That is a lot. Times $60, we're talking about $600 million in revenue in 3 days. That's some crazy numbers. But yeah. Another rumor we got here. New AAA Alien game is in development. Again, rumor, I always take with a grain of salt. But a new AAA Alien game is in development with a tentative holiday 2023 release date. According to multiple sources who spoke with Insider Gaming, the sources who have remained anonymous did provide documents and some information. The Alien title is believed to be codenamed Marathon and is in development for current generation consoles, PS5 and Series X and S. It has a AAA budget. However, the sources did not reveal the developer for the game. However, it is stated to be a survival horror game and is inspired by Dead Space and Resident Evil. The sources also claim that a sequel to Alien Isolation is also either in development or is currently being pitched. The developer for the game wasn't provided. However, the original Alien Isolation was developed by Creative Assembly, so if there is a sequel in development or potentially being pitched, probably will be by Creative Assembly. And as always, this should be treated as a rumor. And one last bit. Xbox 360 controllers are coming back for the Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC. Being made by Hyperkin. Price wasn't announced. I don't think a release date was announced either. But it's going to be called the Xenon, which the name which is taken from the CPU used in the 360 console. Again, that was codenamed Xenon. The Xenon will be available in white, black, red, and pink, and will work on, again, the Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC. And no release date or price have been given yet. There are minor changes to the controller. Instead of a start and back button here, it is replaced with a menu and view buttons like you see on the current Xbox consoles. And a share button right here in the middle has also been added. And also the controller is powered by USB-C cable and has a 3.5mm headset jack. Hyperkin also in 2008 released a replica of the original Xbox controller nicknamed the Duke for $70. But that controller did see some minor changes, as well as having a screen in the middle that showed the Xbox boot up animation whenever it was turned on, the controller specifically. Well, this doesn't look like it'll have a screen in the middle, so I would expect this would be $50 or $60 at launch when it comes out, but we'll see. So yeah, potentially. But not potentially. We'll be seeing at some point a replica 360 controller coming out. If anyone is excited for, or was a fan of the 360 controller. So yeah, that is going to cover today's Game News Roundup. As always, if you enjoyed it, hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe. Leave any comments you want down below. It all helps the YouTube algorithm and helps the channel out. And of course, if you want to watch these live, twitch.tv/TrunksWD. And yeah, these are usually live streamed on Mondays and Wednesday evenings. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.